approximately 100 of them, that already had employment somewhere else. We did notify everyone today, told them that they could stay on additional 2 weeks. And I would imagine that a large percent of this 100 who have already promised to go to work like tomorrow or Monday, more than likely will leave the agency and go on to work and do other areas. And of course, we all know what that's going to be. That's going to be some of our best employees that we are going to lose as a result of this. That pay considerable more than what they were making here. Fringe benefits are better.
Motorists were prepared to move at a snail's pace on their way to work this morning, but the roads were passable. People slowed down just to be cautious, but traffic moved extremely well, especially on the well-traveled roads like the Broadway extension. Sanding crews had been out the night before, sanding icy roads and bridges. The only place motorists were finding a slight problem was in the residential areas where the streets are less traveled. But by taking it slowly, Oklahoma City motorists did quite well in their maneuvers. But the city maintenance department wants to take part of that credit.
Well, of course, we had a little more time to prepare for this storm, and the good Lord helped us a little bit in sending the worst part of it to the north of us. But I thought the men did an exceptionally fine job last night, considering the streets turned to a sheet of ice a little after 8 last night, and by being able to fight it. And of course, then, as I said, the prep time that we had yesterday and being sure that all equipment was able to go, you know, that helped a lot, because we found a lot of little things that would have given us problems last night that we didn't have.
Salt and sand were being loaded up for anticipated snow later in the day. The sanding crews wanted to make sure everything was in order should their services be needed. Even if they're not, what they learned from this snow will be valuable for the rest of the winter. Bella Shaw, Action 4.
Shawnee police rousted 14 sleeping residents from the flaming Broadway Hotel this morning. The evacuees taken right across the street to the police department, but they're now staying in other Shawnee hotels and homes. Francis and Daryl McDowell got out of the Broadway safely and are staying at the nearby Aldrich Hotel. Another evacuee, Lois Sullivan, is at the Salvation Army headquarters, while Regina Mooney is staying in a private home. 4 others who escaped the flames of the Broadway Hotel have taken refuge here at the Holiday Inn in Shawnee. One of those is the 68-year-old hotel owner who says she lost everything in the fire.
They were really trying to get everyone out, it seemed to me. That's the reason why I went on, because if they hadn't, I said, well, I'll just go start checking rooms. Because you feel like it's your responsibility to have to get them people out of there, out of your hotel. But they told us, they said, don't mean, they said, we'll get them out. You go on.
Hotel owner Lola Olson escaped with the help of 4 police officers and her close friend, Sharon Armstrong.
The policeman had pushed my door open and yelled, everybody get out. And when I woke up and sat up in bed, I could see him down on his knees with the smoke just hovering right over his head. So I jumped up and beat on the door next to me to wake that girl up. And then I went out in the hall and hollered for Mrs. Olson, and they assured me that they were bringing her out. They brought her out to the head of the stairs, and I led her down the stairs, and then we all went to the police station.
The owner's grandson, John Olson, didn't even have time to put his shoes on, escaping in jeans and an undershirt. Hotel maintenance man Tony Barfield tried in vain to wake co-worker Derek Mankins.
I looked out in the hallway, and flames were shooting out of one of the rooms, and they were catching across the floor going to the other side of the hallway. And so I ran in there and I shook Derek and tried to get him to wake up, and he wouldn't wake up, and the police officer came in and told me to leave, and that he'd get all the people that stayed behind out. And so I left. That's when I saw John and a few other people in the hallway, and we all went out the front door, went to the police station. They haven't found him yet.
Lola Olson had leased the second-story hotel for some 20 years. But now the hotel is gone, and so is part of her life.
She's been here for over 20 years, and as you know, it's 20 rooms that she rented out, and that was her source of income. Now she doesn't have anything.
Larry Audis, Action 4, Shawnee.
Sure was a lot of smoke though.
Well, I don't know what caused it. What'd they say?
John is sitting here with us now, and they're being interviewed by
This girl and I took her on down.
What'd they say? They sure like to give publicity to the hotel.
The man Tulsa police are looking for is described as a white male, 27 to 34 years old, 5 foot 6 inches to 5 foot 8 inches tall, wearing thick glasses. The description came from a sporting goods employee who remembered selling a special bolt similar to the one used in the killing. It's a big break for police because the bolts are hard to trace. The manufactured varieties are numerous and they can easily be made at home or from old arrows. There's also the distinct possibility that the bolt was not bought in Tulsa or even in Oklahoma. One local Crossbow salesman says the sporting goods employee may be able to provide more information on the buyer and the weapon used in the killing.
Help you determine your manufacturer. A lot of times when people come in to buy crossbow arrows, we ask them, generally what they're going to use them for, because that'll help determine the length of the arrow that they need, plus the type of tip that they may need. So I'm saying, if a person came into our store and asked us to buy some crossbow arrows, we would ask them 3 or 4 questions about what they needed. That way we would tend to remember, possibly, who we sold them to.
Preston feels there's little chance the killing was an accident. Most crossbows come equipped with safeties nowadays. There's 4 steps you have to go through before shooting the bow. First, you cock the bow. Then you put the arrow inside it, and automatically the safety is on. You cannot pull the trigger all the way back. You have to release the safety and pull the trigger. You'd have to do that before shooting someone. For Action 4, this is Sherry Sellers reporting from the Oklahoma Archery Center.
most of the instances that have been cited are those that have occurred in years past, and that none of them are of current occurrence.
Okay, you're saying you're not aware of any abuses right now?
Not at the present time. Now, most of these instances were involved and are involved in this lawsuit that the ACLU and Legal Aid has filed against the department. That case has been going on for about 4 years.
This weekend, the Phoenix, a local Muskogee newspaper, reported on some horror stories allegedly going on at the Oklahoma Children's Center. Some of the major charges include physical and sexual abuse of children at the center, a prostitution ring allegedly using teenagers in the operation. There's a charge of illegal drugs being bought and sold by juveniles. And the newspaper alleges people who have been hired at the center who have criminal backgrounds and are not qualified. The center, located in Taft, is the home for deprived children from around Oklahoma. Children stay here on an average of about 8 months. The Phoenix alleges some children are chained and beaten, and that girls who are runaways are oftentimes taken to Muskogee and Tulsa to work as prostitutes. There are claims by the newspaper that some employees at the facility are allegedly involved in the prostitution operation. Officials at the Children's Center say everything possible is being done to prevent illegal activity without violating the rights of the children.
I'm willing to have my records and the records of Mr. Rader open. There have been no abuse here at Oklahoma Children's Center. We have taken whatever steps we could to make sure that all employees are trained using the latest of techniques like the MAT system to make sure that even when they have to physically enforce youngsters, they do it in a way that the youngster's not hurt and the employee's not hurt.
The Human Services Department says it is making progress along with the Muskogee District Attorney's Office in checking out the allegations.
As of this date, charges have been filed against 2 people who are local residents who live outside the Taft Center, and warrants have been issued on those 2 cases. We still have an ongoing investigation into allegations of misconduct by some of our employees at the center, and termination letters have been sent to 2 of those employees.
Investigators expect to question several people at the Juvenile Center to find out if more warrants should be issued. Officials say it will take months before they know exactly how true the abuse allegations are. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in Taft.
Well, we've made a lot more difference in the past than we have right at this point, but I think in the future we'll make a more difference also. I think there for a while we were rather lax and things got kind of out of hand as far as economic conditions. But I think farmers are well aware of the problem again. They have been, but I think it'll make a big difference in '82.
What's your reaction to the Farm Bill?
Well, it's no good. The Farm Bill actually does very little for anybody. It just doesn't have much in it. And certainly we've got to amend that Farm Bill to make it effective or forget it because it's just not workable as it is.
Oklahoma's oil boom is a focal point of Speaker Draper's tax plan. Draper wants to increase the severance tax on the state's natural gas. Oil men now pay a 7% tax. Draper wants it to go up to 10%, an action that would raise another $122 million. The money would be spent in 3 specific areas. First, over $70 million would go to water development, a top priority for state government. Second, nearly $25 million would be spent on construction of new, safer public schools. Finally, the remaining money would go to the Oklahoma Permanent Trust Fund, a hedge against lean years when the oil boom burst. Draper also wants some sort of elimination of the sales tax on food. The plan calls for a tax credit or rebate. Each taxpayer would get a $15 a year credit or a rebate on food purchased. A family of 4 would get a rebate of $60, a family of 10, $150. What does all this mean? Draper says most of the $122 million in gas tax increases would come from out of state, so the hike will cost the average home only about $6 a year. Subtract that from the food tax rebate, and you have an overall tax break. That means more money coming in from out of the state and more money going back to the Oklahoma taxpayer. Reaction to Draper's tax package is mixed. Governor Nye says that he will reserve judgment, but Tom Daxon, a Republican candidate for governor, is adamantly against it. He calls it a clever attempt to raise taxes. Draper's tax package may not be the one finally approved, and there will surely be more plans and more promises made before a final decision is reached. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4.
Are you still in Atlanta Arena?
And North units calling. Spencer 11, would you repeat, please?
Reporters met with new Oklahoma City Police Chief Lloyd Gramling at his first news conference today. City Manager Scott Johnson made the announcement that Gramling would be replacing retiring Chief Tom Heggie. Johnson had to look at the applications of 20 people before he made his final decision, and he says it was not an easy decision to make.
Tom made the choice very difficult by developing and nurturing the talents of a large number of people in the Oklahoma City Police Department. There were a number of extremely well-qualified candidates, and that's made it a very difficult decision for me to make.
Gramling's first day on the job will be next Tuesday. He joined the Oklahoma City Police Department in October of 1953. The new police chief says he's concerned about improving the image of police officers.
I think it's in our grasp to think that as our officers drive down the streets of Oklahoma City, or as they walk down the streets of Oklahoma City in uniform, that in the days ahead that our young people and our old people alike will be proud to say, there's one of our Oklahoma City police officers. We're proud of them.
And what do the more than 700 officers think of Gramling as chief? It's too early to tell. He promises to work with the Fraternal Order of Police and city leaders, but he says his first order of business is something that should interest most officers, which is promotions. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
As you know, I'm one of the more conservative Democrats within the Congress, and I would dare say that that's the greatest concern at this particular point is how you get down that deficit. The highest deficit we've had in the past has been $66 billion. This one, assuming all of the proposed user fee increases and so forth are passed, would probably be $92 billion. But if those are not passed, it would be well in excess of $100 billion.
Yeah, we want to respond to that, and that's one reason we're long and hard hours every day.
Mr. Norwood watched an interview on Channel 4 in this bill.
The information in many instances reported by Gannett is an initial type of information. It reflects information that was gleaned after someone initially observed an occurrence and reported it. It doesn't go further in many cases. It doesn't show what occurred as a follow-up. It doesn't show employee action. It doesn't show whether the child's story proved to be true. It doesn't show any hearings or meetings that may have been held. It's missing in many aspects.
Where they have
But there's a lot of other information in these files, which if you could release, which protects the child, would certainly give everybody a better understanding of what we're faced with.
That statement has stymied reporters' questions at each of the Human Services Department news conferences. The department says it's walking a tightrope. On one side, it says it would like to respond to specific allegations of abuse in its institutions. On the other side, the department says that it has a legal obligation to protect the confidentiality of records pertaining to children under its care. For example, the department has balked at releasing medical records of children allegedly abused. Without the crucial medical records, it's difficult for reporters to understand exactly what happened to the children involved in the incidents. The Human Services Department has fired off a letter to State Attorney General Jan Cartwright seeking legal guidance on the matter. Likewise, the department has asked the state's juvenile court judges what information can be released. But until those legal questions are answered, certain files will remain off limits to reporters, and the daily news conferences will become increasingly frustrating for both sides. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the State Department of Human Services.
An Oklahoma City viewer writes in and says, what legal rights does my husband have to real estate that I owned before our marriage that is still in my maiden name? It was a gift from the estate of my grandmother and is jointly owned by my mother and myself. He threatens to take it and my daughters from me if we divorce, as well as retaining everything we jointly own and have acquired together during our marriage. Well, your husband has no legal right to the property you inherited. That is, unless he performed extensive improvements on the property, as this property is not part of the marital estate and he did nothing to earn any rights to it. His threats are meaningless, as you have rights to a fair share of all jointly acquired marital property and the return of 100% of all your property acquired prior to the marriage. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.
Week that we had, and really what we were trying to do, a lot of people said, well, we're conducting our own investigation. That really hasn't been the case, but we have been trying to look into quote, is there sensationalism to some degree, and has it helped or hurt the kids? I guess that would be to paraphrase your question. Possibly there has been to some extent, but there's also been some very good points of it. I can't help but think that, yes, if you had employees that were abusing kids, and I think there were, it's becoming documented, and they're admitting to it in some cases, this type of exposure should eliminate that. I would think that no one would be selling drugs to the kids right now if they had been in the past. I would think that no one would be abusing a child sexually or any other way physically, even if they had been in the past. I would think with this type of attention, knowing that that it's going to be focused and possibly a very strong action should be taken and probably would be taken if it should happen now. The legislature's talking about increasing penalties and so on. Hopefully that will stop it, help stop it. So I think there's been some good and some bad overall out of all the attention that's been focused. What is it?
Tony Stewart was shot early this morning through the jaw after an argument over a borrowed airbrush. He had apparently borrowed the sprayer some time ago from Gilbert Hackett Sr. of Mustang. It was never returned, so Hackett went looking for the borrower last night with his son and some friends. They found Stewart driving near Lake Holberholser. When Stewart realized what they wanted, he drove over to Hackett's home and pulled his car into the driveway. Hackett pulled his truck in behind him, blocking the other vehicle in. Hackett's son jumped out of the truck and went over to talk to Stewart. His father pushed him out of the way and shot Stewart with a .44 caliber revolver. Tony Stewart was taken to Hillcrest Hospital and is listed in stable condition. Gilbert Hackett Sr. has been charged with shooting with the intent to kill. His son, Gilbert Hackett Jr., has been charged with conspiracy. Both are in the Mustang jail. Sherry Sellers, Action 4.